The gleaming medical research station of the Galactic Alliance hung in space like a giant silver snowflake, its 6 arms stretching out from a central hub. In Docking Bay 4, Dr. Blue's tendrils rippled with nervous energy as he waited for the human ship to arrive. As the Alliance's chief medical officer, he had studied thousands of species, but this was different. Humans were their first contact from a high-gravity world. The ship docked with a gentle thud. Dr. Blue's assistant, Mr. Green, wobbled slightly on his thin legs. "Sir, are you sure this is safe? The data shows their home planet has crushing gravity levels." "That's why we're here." Dr. Blue's bioluminescent spots pulsed calmly. "To understand them." The airlock cycled open, and Dr. James Miller stepped out. He looked around with an easy smile, walking normally despite the station's low gravity. Dr. Blue noticed with growing concern that the human moved without any anti-gravity assistance. "Welcome to Medical Station 6, Dr. Blue said through the translator. "I trust your journey was comfortable." "Very much so," Dr. Miller replied, extending his hand in greeting. Dr. Blue reached out with a tendril, then froze as his medical scanner started beeping frantically. The readings made his spots flash pale with shock. "Security. Emergency Protocol 7. Guards rushed in, pointing stun weapons at the confused human. "What's wrong?" Dr. Miller asked, raising his hand slowly. You have metal inside you. Iron. In your blood." Dr. Blue's voice trembled. "And your internal structure. It's made of minerals. You're filled with calcium formations." Dr. Miller blinked. "Oh, you mean my bones and blood. That's normal for humans. We're iron-based life forms with an internal skeleton." The security team took several steps back. Mr. Green fainted, his green color turning pale. "Normal." Dr. Blue's spots were now flashing in patterns of pure distress. "Your body is filled with rock-like structures and metal-enriched fluid, and you call this normal?" "Well, yes," Dr. Miller said carefully. "All humans have this. It's how we evolved on Earth. The iron in our blood carries oxygen, and our bones support us against our planet's gravity." Dr. Blue moved to a console, his tendrils shaking as he pulled up more scan data. "Your muscle density, it's incredible. And your skin, it's like armor compared to most species." "Really?" Dr. Miller looked genuinely surprised. "Our skin is actually quite delicate compared to some Earth animals." That statement caused another wave of panic among the station staff. The idea that there were even tougher creatures on Earth was almost too much to handle. "We need to quarantine you immediately," Dr. Blue declared, "for safety." "Wait," Dr. Miller said firmly. "I'm here as part of the cultural exchange program. We need to understand each other. Yes, human biology is different from yours, but that's what makes the galaxy interesting, right?" Dr. Blue's spots slowed their panicked flashing. The human's words made sense, even if his biology was terrifying. Perhaps you're right. But we need to study you carefully. Your species is unlike anything we've encountered." "That's why I'm here," Dr. Miller smiled. "To help you understand us, and to learn about you. Though I have to admit, I never thought our basic biology would cause such a stir." Over the next few hours, Dr. Blue ran more detailed scans, each revealing new surprises about human biology. The command center was in constant communication, updating their species threat assessment with each discovery. "Fascinating," Dr. Blue muttered, reviewing the data. "Your species evolved in an environment that would crush most of our Alliance members. Instead of dying out, you adapted, became stronger." "Earth shaped us," Dr. Miller nodded. "We're built to endure." As the day ended, Dr. Blue made his first official report to the Alliance Council. "Humans appear to be walking biological marvels. Their bodies contain structures we would consider lethal weapons in other species. They are stronger, denser, and more durable than expected. And yet," he glanced at Dr. Miller, who was calmly drinking water, "they seem peaceful and eager to learn. I recommend continued study with caution. There is much more to discover about these remarkable beings." Little did Dr. Blue know, this was just the beginning of his shocking discoveries about human biology. The real surprises were yet to come. The second day of Dr. Miller's stay on Medical Station 6 started with a scream. One of the junior medical officers had finally finished processing yesterday's detailed bone scans, and the results caused him to fall off his floating chair. "They're hollow." The officer pointed at the screen with a shaking tentacle. "The calcium structures are hollow and filled with manufacturing tissue." Dr. Blue rushed over to examine the scans. His spots turned a deep purple, a sign of deep scientific interest mixed with horror. "Dr. Miller, please explain this." "Your bones are not solid." "No, they're filled with bone marrow," Dr. Miller explained, looking at the stunning 3D display of his skeletal system. "That's where we make our blood cells." The room went silent. Even the usual hum of the medical equipment seemed to pause. "You make blood inside your bones." Dr. Blue's translator struggled to maintain a steady tone. "But that's not even the most disturbing part. These scans show evidence of multiple previous breaks and repairs. Your bones have been broken, and they got stronger." Dr. Miller nodded. "Yes, that's normal. When bones heal, they often become stronger at the break point. I broke my arm playing sports when I was 12. The healed area is actually tougher than the original bone." Mr. Green, who had just recovered from yesterday's shock, promptly fainted again. "This defies all biological logic." Dr. Blue's tentacles were waving in agitation. "You're saying that damage makes you stronger? This is like living metal," one of the security guards whispered. "They're biological machines that repair and upgrade themselves." The comment spread through the station's communication system like wildfire. Within hours, representatives from various Alliance species were demanding emergency meetings. The station's main conference room was packed with holographic projections of concerned officials. "They're practically indestructible," shouted one reptilian diplomat. "Their young must be terrifying," said another, this one appearing as a floating cloud of gas. Dr. Miller stood before them, trying to maintain his patience. "We're not indestructible at all. We're actually quite fragile compared to some Earth species. Our ability to heal is just an evolutionary adaptation." "Just an adaptation." A crystalline being flickered in disbelief. "Your calcium framework can repair itself, and you treat this as normal." "Perhaps a demonstration would help," Dr. Miller suggested. He brought up images from Earth's medical databases showing the healing process of bones. The assembled aliens watched in fascinated horror as the images showed breaks mending, growing stronger, adapting. "Look at this one." Dr. Blue pointed at a particularly interesting scan. "This human broke the same bone twice, and it healed even stronger. They don't just repair, they improve. That's why we need impact exercise to maintain bone health," Dr. Miller added helpfully. "Regular stress keeps our bones strong." This comment caused another wave of panic. The idea of deliberately stressing these self-repairing calcium structures was almost too much to comprehend. As the meeting descended into chaos, Dr. Blue made an interesting observation. His initial fear was being replaced by scientific curiosity. Yes, human biology was terrifying by Alliance standards, but it was also fascinating. Every new discovery showed just how resourceful nature could be on a high-gravity death world. "I propose," Dr. Blue announced, his spots glowing with authority, "that we continue our studies. Yes, human bone structure is unlike anything we've seen. Yes, their healing abilities are disturbing. But think of the medical advances we could make by understanding this process." The room gradually calmed down. Scientific curiosity began to overcome fear. "Tomorrow," Dr. Blue said to Dr. Miller as they left the conference room, "I want to learn more about these joints where your bones connect. The scans show they're lubricated and self-maintaining." Dr. Miller smiled. "Oh yes, and wait until you learn about cartilage." Mr. Green, who had just regained consciousness, decided to take the rest of the day off. Something told him tomorrow would bring even more shocking revelations about human biology. On the third day of the human study, disaster struck in the station's cafeteria. Dr. Miller accidentally cut his finger while opening a food package. It was a tiny cut, barely worth noticing, but the reaction from the alien staff was immediate and dramatic. "It's leaking iron," someone screamed. "The human is leaking liquid metal." The cafeteria emptied in seconds. Only Dr. Blue remained, his spots flashing between scientific curiosity and instinctive fear as he watched the small drop of red blood well up on Dr. Miller's finger. "Fascinating," Dr. Blue whispered, scanning the blood with his medical device. "Your blood is actually carrying iron particles, and it's red because of oxygen binding to the iron." "That's right," Dr. Miller said, pulling out a small bandage from his pocket. "Hemoglobin in our red blood cells carries oxygen throughout our bodies. The iron makes it work better." Dr. Blue's tentacles curled in surprise. You just carry repair materials with you. You expect to leak regularly. It's just a small bandage. Humans get minor cuts and scrapes all the time. We heal quickly." Dr. Miller applied the bandage, but the damage was done. News of the liquid metal leak spread through the station faster than a solar flare. Within an hour, the medical bay was packed with Alliance scientists, all demanding to understand how humans handled their dangerous iron-based circulatory system. Mr. Green, who had finally worked up the courage to return to work, operated the display screens with shaking appendages. "Let me get this straight," one scientist said, their crystalline form flickering with agitation. "You lose this iron-rich fluid regularly, and you just make more." "Yes," Dr. Miller explained patiently. "Our bone marrow constantly produces new blood cells. We can lose a significant amount of blood and recover completely." The room erupted in fearful whispers. Dr. Blue quickly took control of the situation, his spots pulsing with authoritative light patterns. "Watch this," he said, displaying the scans he'd taken of the small cut. The assembled scientists gasped as time-lapse imagery showed the wound already beginning to close. "The blood actually helps form a plug to stop more bleeding," Dr. Blue explained, his scientific excitement overcoming his fear. "Then the surrounding tissue begins to knit itself back together. It's like watching a living repair system in action." "But the iron content," another scientist interjected. "How do they prevent internal rust?" Dr. Miller couldn't help but laugh. "Our bodies have evolved to handle that. The iron is contained within our red blood cells. It's all very efficient." A holographic message appeared in the center of the room. The Alliance Security Council wanted an immediate report. Dr. Blue connected the feed, his tentacles moving gracefully over the controls. "Honorable Council," he began, "today we witnessed human tissue repair in action. Their blood contains significant amounts of iron, which they use to transport oxygen. Yes, it's dangerous by our standards, but highly efficient for their species. And this iron-based blood," a council member asked, "it powers their entire body." "Indeed," Dr. Miller stepped forward. "Every cell in our bodies needs oxygen. Our blood delivers it, along with nutrients and other important materials." The council chamber went quiet. Finally, one member spoke. "So their entire body is constantly flooded with iron-rich liquid that they can replenish at will. And this seems normal to them." "Perfectly normal," Dr. Miller assured them, "though I'm beginning to understand why it might seem strange to you." As the meeting ended, Dr. Blue made another note in his research log. "Human blood composition continues to challenge our understanding of biology. Their casual acceptance of carrying liquid metal through their bodies is both terrifying and remarkable. Tomorrow we will study their blood clotting mechanisms, though I suspect Mr. Green will need another day off." Mr. Green, already pale at the thought of tomorrow's studies, nodded weakly. He had heard Dr. Miller mention something called platelets and decided he didn't want to know what other surprises human blood contained. As they left the medical bay, Dr. Miller smiled to himself. If they were this shocked by human blood, He wondered how they would react when they learned about adrenaline. The fourth day of human studies started normally enough. Dr. Miller suggested they use the station's exercise room to demonstrate human physical capabilities. Dr. Blue agreed, though he insisted on triple safety protocols and a full medical team standing by. Nobody expected what happened next. As Dr. Miller was showing them basic human exercise routines, a support beam in the gym creaked. One of the heavy weight sets broke loose from its mounting, falling directly toward Mr. Green, who stood frozen in terror. What happened in the next few seconds would change the Alliance's view of humans forever. Dr. Miller moved faster than anyone thought possible. His pupils dilated, his heart rate spiked, and he crossed the room in a blur of motion. He pushed Mr. Green to safety and caught the falling weight set with what looked like impossible strength. The medical monitors went crazy. Dr. Blue's spots turned pure white with shock as he read the readings. Your entire biology just changed. Dr. Blue's tendrils waved frantically at the screens. Heart rate increased 300%. Muscle density doubled. Blood pressure spiked. Pupils dilated. What kind of emergency transformation is this? Dr. Miller set down the weights carefully, breathing heavily. That's just adrenaline. It's a hormone our bodies produce in emergencies. Fight or flight response. The room fell silent. Even the medical equipment seemed to beep more quietly. You're saying, Dr. Blue translated slowly, that your bodies can temporarily upgrade themselves. Without technology. Without preparation. Well, yes, Dr. Miller wiped some sweat from his forehead. Our adrenal glands release hormones that prepare our bodies for emergency action. More oxygen to muscles, increased strength and speed, better reaction time. All humans can do it. Mr. Green, still shaking from his near accident, finally found his voice. All humans? Even your younglings? Yes, it's a natural survival mechanism, Dr. Miller explained. Though we try not to trigger it too often, it's physically demanding. The station's alert level immediately went to yellow. The security team, watching through monitors, upgraded their threat assessment of humans yet again. Dr. Blue called an emergency meeting right there in the gym. His medical team ran scan after scan, trying to understand how this temporary upgrade system worked. Let me understand this clearly, Dr. Blue said, his spots now showing a pattern of deep scientific fascination. Your bodies maintain a chemical reservoir of emergency enhancement compounds, just in case. That's a very technical way of putting it, Dr. Miller smiled. But yes, adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, they all help us respond to dangerous situations. And this happens automatically, without conscious control. Mostly, though we can learn to control our responses to some degree. One of the security officers raised a point through the comm system. So humans not only have metal-infused blood and self-repairing bones, but they can also temporarily transform into enhanced versions of themselves. When you put it that way, it does sound a bit dramatic, Dr. Miller admitted. But it's really just basic survival biology for us. Dr. Blue was already composing his report to the Alliance Council. Subject demonstrates ability to consciously suppress or activate emergency biological enhancements. Temporary improvements include enhanced strength, speed, reaction time, and decision-making capabilities. Note, this appears to be standard for their species. The security officer added his own note. Recommend updating human classification to include spontaneous combat enhancement capabilities. As the excitement died down, Mr. Green approached Dr. Miller cautiously. Thank you for saving me, even if your method of doing so was terrifying. Dr. Miller smiled kindly. You're welcome. Though I should mention, that wasn't even close to the maximum adrenaline response a human can produce. Mr. Green decided then and there to request a transfer to a nice, quiet botanical research station, somewhere very far from Earth. Dr. Blue, however, was more excited than ever. Tomorrow, he announced, we should discuss how humans maintain consciousness during their daily shutdown periods. Daily shutdown. Dr. Miller asked. "Oh, you mean sleep. That might be the most interesting conversation yet." The security team quietly doubled the night watch, just in case these fascinating but terrifying humans had more surprises in store. The fifth day brought what Dr. Blue considered the most disturbing discovery yet about human biology. It started when Dr. Miller mentioned he needed to go to sleep soon. "What do you mean by go to sleep?" Dr. Blue asked, his spots flickering with concern. "Well, humans need to sleep about 8 hours every day," Dr. Miller explained. "It's when our bodies and minds rest and recover." The medical bay erupted in panic. Mr. Green, who had returned despite yesterday's excitement, dropped his datapad. "You shut down every day." Dr. Blue's translator struggled to maintain a steady tone. "For 8 hours, and this is normal." "Actually," Dr. Miller yawned, making several aliens jump back, "I'm a bit overdue. Would you like to monitor my sleep cycle? It might be interesting for your research." The next hour was spent setting up every medical scanner the station had. Security insisted on putting force fields around the sleeping area, just in case. No one quite knew what a sleeping human might do. "Beginning sleep cycle monitoring," Dr. Blue announced, his tentacles moving across multiple control panels. "Subject appears to be entering voluntary shutdown." The aliens watched in fascinated horror as Dr. Miller lay down, closed his eyes, and stopped moving. "Life signs are stable," one medical officer reported, "but brain activity is changing." Dr. Blue's spots turned a deep shade of purple as he studied the readings. "This is extraordinary. The human brain isn't shutting down at all. It's entering some kind of alternative operating mode." Then the REM sleep started. "Alert! Alert!" The medical officer's crystalline form flickered in panic. "The human's eyes are moving rapidly under their lids. Brain activity is spiking." "They're dreaming," Dr. Blue read from his Earth biology notes. "Apparently, humans experience sensory simulations while in this state." The security chief's voice came over the comm. "Are you saying they run combat simulations while powered down?" "Not exactly," Dr. Blue responded, reading more. "They process information, consolidate memories, and sometimes experience random neural firings that create narrative experiences." Just then, Dr. Miller smiled in his sleep, causing several observers to back away quickly. "They can change facial expressions while unconscious," Mr. Green whispered in terror. "How do we know what they're simulating?" The night shift became the most requested observation duty on the station. Alien scientists took turns watching the sleeping human, documenting every twitch, every murmur, every change in brain activity. Around hour 6, Dr. Miller rolled over. 3 security officers reached for their stun weapons. "Most fascinating," Dr. Blue noted, "they can reposition themselves while maintaining the shutdown state." Then Dr. Miller did something that nearly caused a station-wide emergency. He talked in his sleep. "No, don't eat the purple ones." The medical bay went into complete lockdown. It took Dr. Blue 20 minutes to convince security that sleep talking was normal and not a sign of imminent danger. When Dr. Miller finally woke up, he found himself surrounded by wide-eyed, or equivalent sensory organs, alien scientists, all keeping a safe distance. "Good morning," he said, stretching. "Did you get good readings?" "Good morning." Dr. Blue's spots pulsed rapidly. "You've just undergone an 8-hour consciousness alteration cycle, and you're acting like it's normal." "It is normal," Dr. Miller smiled. "All humans need sleep, though some can function on less. Some people even take short naps during the day. Voluntary mid-cycle shutdowns." Mr. Green squeaked. "They can enter this state at will." Dr. Blue was already updating his report to the Alliance Council. Humans require daily consciousness shutdown for mental processing. During this period, they run internal simulations, process information, and can even vocalize while unconscious. They appear to emerge from this state stronger and more efficient. Note, they consider this completely normal. The security chief added his own note. Recommend continuous monitoring of human sleep cycles. Cannot confirm what combat skills they may be practicing in their dreams. As Dr. Miller headed to the cafeteria for breakfast, he heard Dr. Blue explaining to his team about something called microsleeps and power naps. Based on the sounds of fainting aliens behind him, tomorrow's discussion about human digestion might need to wait a bit. In his quarters, Mr. Green requested a nightlight, just in case any humans decided to sleep nearby. The sixth day started with lunch, which turned out to be yet another source of alien panic. Dr. Miller sat in the station's cafeteria, eating a sandwich while Dr. Blue scanned him with increasing alarm. You're dissolving organic matter inside your body. Dr. Blue's spots were flashing in patterns that indicated extreme distress. With acid, that's how digestion works, Dr. Miller said between bites. Our stomachs use hydrochloric acid to break down food. The cafeteria, which had slowly been returning to normal around the human, emptied again in seconds. Only Mr. Green remained, partly hidden behind a support column, taking notes with shaking appendages. Your species willingly contains an acid-producing organ. Dr. Blue's tendrils curled in horror, and you regularly put organic matter into it for dissolution. Well, when you put it that way, it does sound a bit scary, Dr. Miller admitted. But it's just our digestive system. We can eat almost anything organic. Well, anything non-toxic. This statement triggered another station-wide alert. The medical bay was quickly filled with concerned scientists, all watching displays of human digestive system scans. Look at this, one scientist pointed at the screen. They have specialized bacteria living inside them to help with digestion. They're carrying entire colonies of microorganisms. Beneficial bacteria, Dr. Miller explained. Our gut flora helps us digest food and maintain health. We have a whole ecosystem in there. Mr. Green, who had finally gathered enough courage to join the meeting, promptly fainted again. So let me understand this correctly. Dr. Blue's translator struggled to maintain composure. You consume organic matter, dissolve it in acid, use resident microscopic life forms to help process it, extract what you need, and then dispose of the rest. That's a very technical way of describing eating, and well, you know, Dr. Miller nodded. We can digest meat, plants, fungi. We're very adaptable. The security chief's voice crackled over the comm system. Are you saying they can process and gain energy from multiple types of organic matter, like some kind of biological processing unit? It gets better, Dr. Miller added helpfully. We can even train our digestive systems to handle new types of food. Our bodies adapt over time. The room fell silent except for the gentle beeping of medical equipment and Mr. Green's quiet groaning as he regained consciousness. Dr. Blue's spots were now pulsing with a mixture of horror and fascination. Your stomach acid. How strong is it? Strong enough to dissolve metal, Dr. Miller replied, though we try to avoid eating metal. 3 more scientists fainted. But don't worry, Dr. Miller quickly added. Our stomachs are lined with special cells that prevent the acid from harming us. We're very well designed. Dr. Blue was frantically updating his report to the Alliance Council. Humans contain internal acid production facilities. They can process multiple forms of organic matter for energy. Their digestive systems include controlled colonies of microorganisms. They can adapt their processing capabilities to new organic materials. Note, they consider this normal and do this multiple times per day. The security chief added his own note. Recommend classifying humans as walking biological processing plants with extreme adaptation capabilities. Later that day, the station's cafeteria was reorganized to have a separate human feeding section with appropriate warning signs. Mr. Green suggested adding blast shields just in case the humans' acid containment systems ever failed. I don't understand, Dr. Miller said to Dr. Blue as they left the medical bay. How do your species process food? We absorb nutrients through our outer membranes, Dr. Blue explained. simple, safe, and without internal acid chambers or resident micro-colonies. Interesting, Dr. Miller replied. Though I should probably wait to tell you about our immune systems tomorrow. That's a whole different kind of internal warfare. In the background, Mr. Green, who had overheard this, quietly began filling out transfer paperwork to the farthest space station possible. He had heard enough about human biology to last several lifetimes. The station's kitchen staff, meanwhile, started a betting pool on what the humans would try to digest next. The current favorite was literally anything they can fit in their acid chambers. The 7th day of the human biology study began with an emergency meeting of the Galactic Alliance Council. The chamber was packed with holographic representatives from every member species, all gathered to hear Dr. Blue's final report about humans. Dr. Miller stood calmly in the center of the room, trying not to smile as Mr. Green hid behind Dr. Blue, clutching a data pad like a shield. Honorable Council, Dr. Blue began, his spots glowing with formal patterns. After 7 days of studying human biology, I must report that they are the most terrifying and fascinating species we've ever encountered. The chamber erupted in worried murmurs. They contain liquid metal in their circulatory systems, Dr. Blue continued. Their bodies are supported by self-repairing mineral structures. They can temporarily enhance their physical capabilities through chemical secretions. They shut down daily for neural processing, during which they run complex mental simulations, and they maintain internal acid chambers for processing organic matter. Several council members flickered or paled, or showed their species equivalent of shock. Based on these findings, a crystalline council member announced, "We propose immediate quarantine of Earth and all human territories." That's when Dr. Miller stepped forward. "Honorable Council, may I speak?" After some nervous discussion, they agreed. "Everything you've heard about human biology is true," Dr. Miller said. "We have iron in our blood, calcium in our bones, acid in our stomachs, and we need sleep every day. But have you asked yourselves why?" The chamber went quiet. "Earth, our home world, shaped us," Dr. Miller continued. "High gravity made us need strong bones. The presence of iron and oxygen led to our blood chemistry. Our complex digestive system evolved because we had to eat whatever we could find to survive. We're not monsters, we're survivors." Dr. Blue's spots began pulsing with a new pattern, one of understanding. "Think about it," Dr. Miller said. "Every terrifying aspect of our biology has a reason. We heal quickly because we got hurt often. We have adrenaline because we needed to fight or run. We dream because our brains need to process complex information. We're not designed to be scary. We're designed to live." "But your abilities," another council member protested, "the potential for danger, are the same as any other species," Dr. Miller interrupted gently. "We've spent the last week focusing on how different human biology is, but look at how similar we are in the ways that matter. We want to learn. We want to understand. We want to be friends." Dr. Blue floated forward. "The human speaks truth. Yes, their biology is shocking by our standards. But in 7 days, despite all their terrifying capabilities, they have shown nothing but patience, kindness, and scientific curiosity." Even Mr. Green gathered enough courage to speak up. They used their strange powers to help others, like when Dr. Miller saved me from the falling weights. The council chamber buzzed with discussion. Finally, the head counselor spoke. "Perhaps we have been too quick to judge based on our own biological biases. Dr. Blue, what is your final recommendation?" Dr. Blue's spots glowed with confident colors. "I recommend we reclassify humans as a protected evolutionary marvel. Their biology isn't wrong or scary. It's a testament to life's ability to adapt and survive. We can learn so much from them." And he added, his spots showing amusement, "They find our biology just as fascinating as we find theirs." The council voted. Instead of quarantine, they approved the creation of a Human Alliance scientific exchange program. Dr. Miller would be the first of many human scientists to share knowledge with the galaxy. As they left the chamber, Dr. Blue turned to Dr. Miller. "I must ask, is there anything else about human biology we should know about?" Dr. Miller grinned. "Well, we haven't discussed our immune system yet. It's basically an internal army that wages constant war against invaders." Mr. Green, who had just started to feel comfortable around humans, immediately submitted his transfer request to the furthest research station possible. But Dr. Blue's spots just glowed with excitement. The galaxy had just become a much more interesting place. After all, what was biology without a few surprises? And somewhere on Earth, the next group of human scientists was preparing to join the exchange program, ready to terrify and amaze the galaxy with yet more revelations about the fascinating horror show that was human biology.